Bruno Palier, who is with the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po, the author of Reforming Pensions. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Are you surprised that the government is going full steam ahead with what polls suggest is a very unpopular reform?
I don't know whether I'm surprised, because that's part of the logic of the Fifth Republic, is that if you want to decide something, you have the means to pass that through, because there might be a majority to vote it. What is more surprising is politically, because the political consequences of having this legislation, unpopular legislation passed, will be really detrimental for the government forming this majority. Will also be detrimental for France, because we can assume that this will really feed social resentment that feed Rassemblement National, extreme right. And this is a very dangerous decision to pass despite the opposition.
So Emmanuel Macron is the first president re-elected since they instituted term limits. So he is a lame duck president.
Exactly.
Does it mean that the remaining 4 years of his term will be poisoned by this, is what you're suggesting?
No, because I think that if he passed it, it will be the electoral consequences on extreme right, etc. So European election and the next presidential election, in a way, Macron doesn't care, because he will not be there. He will be the last of the Democrats, if you wish, so on his side. But his parties, the party supporting him, may think twice before voting for that, because they diminish the chance to be re-elected.
Hold on, that's worth repeating, Bruno Palier. You're saying Macron himself may not care. It's just his party that cares. So you're saying basically this is the decision of one man alone?
I mean, that's the very spirit of the Fifth Republic. I guess you keep saying it's a constitutional monarchy or something like that. We know that. And it has been made for the executive power to have the power to design and pass on. But now we are, close to a strong legitimacy crisis. If they have the means to pass it, and as you know, through the 49.3, they may have the opportunity to have it. But it's a very illegitimate, and this will have political consequences. Now the government has to ponder what kind of loss I prefer. I prefer to lose on that and perhaps regain on other front, or I show my strength here at the price of electoral consequences.
Well, Emmanuel Macron, for the first time in decades, ruling with a minority government. He doesn't have a majority in parliament. He promised he would reach out after the second round of those legislative elections. This is a case in point. Is he doing that?
I mean, formally he's, because he's making, he's not, but the government is making a lot of concession to the right. Right,
to the Conservatives.
The Conservatives, the center-right party, because they need the vote for them. So they have made a lot of concession, both in the National Assembly and now in the Senate. So currently he's trying to reach out to have a majority on that. And actually the initial purpose was politically that, to prove that he's a reformist, so he's not afraid of the street, and second, that he can have majorities despite the fact that he has a minority government. So this was the political calculation at the origin of this reform, and the way it has been not prepared in a way, because they just took the usual proposal made by the center-right in Senate and say, okay, if I took your proposal, you will vote it, so it will be simple. They just forgot that the people are disagreeing with that, and they are disagreeing with having to work longer. And that's the key issue that the government missed totally, is that there is a problem with work in France.
There's a problem with working longer, or there's a problem with work?
There is a problem with work. What this reform is about is not really about changing the pension system. As you know, it's just asking people to work 2 more years. Basically, some will have 1 year and a half, and some 2 months. And the French say no. So the question is, why do the French say no? And a usual American Brit person will say, because they are lazy, we know the French. Actually, if you look at data, we have seen the hours of work increasing tremendously in France over the last 10 years. We work as long as a bit longer than the Germans, as long as the Brits, for instance. What's different is the productivity per hour, which is pretty high. What is different is the rate of burnout, which is amongst the highest in Europe. What is different is the management in France, which is still very archaic, if you wish. It's very vertical. The managers gives you objectives and you have to fulfill them. And if you fulfill them, they make an even higher one. Because one of the key economic situation of France is to try to do more things with less and less people. So you have an intensification of work in France, really. And this is different from an American extensive approach to work. You work in the US much longer time, hours, but less intensely. We work less, but we work more intensely, and people are exhausted. And some people have been pushed outside the labor market at the age of 55, 57. And these people, half of the over 60, they don't understand when the government tells them you have to work more because they are already out. And the other half has to work, for the other ones, and it's very intense, and they don't want. So that's the key question.
For those, so we're getting now to the crux of this reform itself. Does it make sense? And I ask the question because there had been this talk of trying to do more to help those older workers retrain or stay in the workforce. Was this done backwards?
I mean, this has not really been done seriously. If you look at the discussion since the first pension reform in France, 93, there has been discussion about what is called in French pénibilité, right? And the question was hardship, right? Was more to remove from the labor market those who have been suffering from a hard job or having been confronted with that. So this was part of the negotiation. Much less was the negotiation, the discussion about how can we improve the quality of jobs? How can we invest in working condition? How can we really train people? Now there are some devices to try to propose training to the elderly, but statistically, after the age of 55, if you ask your employer, can I get a training? They say, no, you're too old. And supposedly you have to work 10 more years.
Why doesn't the government just then, in that case, lower payroll taxes for seniors? And therefore, those older workers, yes, they'll be getting less tax revenue from employers, but at least they're paying into the system.
So that's, as you know, one of the concessions made to the Senate yesterday, actually, to create a specific contract for senior. The problem is how much you make sure that you give some money away and they are still paying to the system. And currently what has been negotiated yesterday is a rebate of 6% of the social contribution, which is not much as compared to the whole thing, which will cost a lot to the system, but not in order to make a key change. Because there will be a windfall effect in the sense that you have still some senior workers and the employers will put them on this new contract. So it will cost a lot without really measure. If you really want to be efficient, you compare with Germany, you compare with Sweden, or you compare with some American firms where they really pay for training. And sometimes you have government subsidies for paying for training, not making the work cheaper.
Right. And you wonder then, at this point in time, why the president is going full steam ahead first with raising the retirement age. Why didn't he delve into what you've just described first? After all, he has 4 years left in his mandate. Why is he in such a rush?
I mean, because there is several reasons. The first reason was that the very reason for this reform was to make savings, right? And as fast as possible. And the solution is very rapid for making savings. Indeed, instead of paying pension, you ask people to continue to work so that you don't pay the pension and you receive more contribution. So this is the fastest way to make savings. So that's what the Ministry of Finance asked the government to do, put a lot of pressure. So that this is where the rush is, because they need to rebalance account starting next year or even at the end of this year. The second thing is a miscalculation politically, saying I want to appear as a man who can reform. I will not be, dissolved in a second mandate as Chirac, as Mitterrand. So I want to show that I can do that, and I will trick the center right. And this was really a miscalculation.
Yeah, because in his first term, Emmanuel Macron had a Midas touch. He even managed to reform the rail system, which is something that they said was impossible. This time he hits a hurdle.
Yeah, because I mean, I think they didn't prepare well this pension reform because they thought, okay, I just take what the right is every year presenting in the Senate, and I just present that, so I don't have to really prepare. But of course, it's different to make a gesture, because this is what the Senate did, was a gesture, and to prepare a proper law with the proper calculation of it, impact, etc. And they obviously didn't do that well. As you know, the debate has shown that we were lacking of data. There has been miscalculation, sometimes even lies about the consequence of it. They didn't prepare well.
One final question for you, Bruno Palier. In this era of globalization, you were talking earlier about how France is very top-down. These strikes, do they show those who are in the streets to be conservative or progressive?
I mean, they are asking for a new world where work would be better, improved, where they would have recognition. And I think that this is the base for a new compromise between employers and workers if they agree to shift from trying to make as much as possible in a reduced format towards quality, improving the quality of production, the quality of services. And for that, as we know, we need qualification of the workforce, quality of workplace, and quality of goods and produce. There is an issue out, positive out of that, a new contract between employers and employees based on quality production.
All right, perhaps a new social contract. Bruno Palier, your book is called Reforming Pensions. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much for the invitation.